Welcome back to Only Nerdy Gaming, the place where pixels, popcorn, and plot twists collide. If it's got lasers, loot boxes, or Lex Luthor, we're going to talk about it. And today, we're going to talk about my review of Superman. Now, before I get into this review, please make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Let me know in the comments down below, have you seen the movie yet? If you have, what were your thoughts? Do you agree with what I'm about to say? Let me know. So, as I was heading to the movie theater this afternoon, I had to keep telling myself, don't let the last 8 or 9 months fog your thoughts about the movie. I wanted to go into it with a fresh and open mind, a critical, dirty mind. I'm a huge Superman fan. I have been since the first time I saw Superman in 1978 when I was 6 or 7, and my uncle brought me a VHS tape that had Superman 1 and 2 on it. Not a marketed VHS tape, but a blank VHS tape where it was most likely recorded off of a showing on TV. Thankfully, paused and restarted every time a commercial came into play. Now, I have to give you a little bit of backstory regarding my thoughts whenever I go into a Superman movie. And there haven't been too many because, well, I'm not super old. So I've only had a chance to see Superman Returns in the movie theater, Man of Steel. I don't count going and seeing Batman v Superman or Justice League as Superman movies. So I only had 2 other films to compare this to when going into a movie. My excitement for Superman Returns was through the roof. Superman Returns was my first cinematic experience seeing Superman in a movie theater. And it happened to be a soft sequel to the Richard Donner films. And when Man of Steel came out, I was going into it a little bit reserved because much like when the first image of this suit came out, when I first saw Henry Cavill's Superman, while I was blown away by the epic action shot of him getting up after being violently thrown into the door of a bank vault, I wasn't too keen on the color and the costume. I'm glad that it was form-fitting. I'm glad that the cape was large and heavy, but I wasn't really sold on the emblem, and I wasn't sold on the dark, muted colors. So when I went into the movie, I had a pretty blank slate. And I enjoyed the movie. It was Superman. I'm a music freak when it comes to superhero scores. And I was bummed that Man of Steel did not have any sort of inkling to the John Williams themes from Superman. And Superman Returns kind of spoiled me a little bit because John Ottman, who works with Bryan Singer quite a bit in the past on the X-Men films, scored Superman with the John Williams theme heavily interwoven, almost piece for piece. And so why do I bring up these past 2 Superman movies as I go into this movie? Well, the main reason I bring that up is for the simple fact that this movie got me excited from the trailers in the beginning, but not because its relationship to the Superman 1978, like Superman Returns did, with the classic Krypton theme and Jor-El's voiceover from Marlon Brando. No, this got me excited because it was bright and colorful. It had the tone and the essence of those Silver Age comic books the 1978 film so brilliantly encompassed and tried to recreate on screen. It wasn't the epic dark fantasy that the Snyderverse was. And don't get me wrong, I really enjoyed some of the Snyderverse. I really enjoyed the aspect of Superman being a god among men. And I could see, as his story progressed, he was moving in a more hopeful direction. But it never got there. That's it. It never got there. So, looking to the future, we've gotten there. And that's what the trailers leading up to the movie showed me. Now, I will say, for the most part, this movie delivered for what I wanted. A colorful, hopeful Superman who's truly embodying Superman. But there were some issues that I did have with the movie that knocked it down a couple rungs that I wasn't totally caught off guard by. I could tell from the trailers that this might be going in a slightly different direction than I was hoping in certain areas. But overall, I really enjoyed the movie, and I think this is a great starting point for James Gunn and Peter Safran's DCU, and I can't wait to see where these characters go next. So, first off, I have to say that David Corenswet as Superman, absolutely fantastic. Lois Lane, played by Rachel Brosnahan, really great. Their chemistry, chef's kiss. If somebody would have told me that those 2 were actually married off screen, I would have believed them. Because the intensity and the chemistry between them 2 was off the charts. Mr. Terrific was pretty terrific. I really enjoyed the portrayal of his character. Guy Gardner was exactly what I expected. Guy Gardner. I'm really not disappointed with how he was portrayed. And I would like to see him in future movies fleshed out a little bit more, specifically with the Green Lantern Corps and the Green Lanterns. I was very happy that he mentioned the Green Lantern Corps in this movie, and I think that was a good call. Speaking about Guy Gardner, I do wish that when he was actually using his abilities, when he was flying, that he had a very slight green aura, that it showed that that's why he was flying. Mr. Terrific had his Terrific car, or his little platform that he sat on or moved around on. And of course, Hot Girl had her wings. Guy Gardner was flying around, as we all know, as being comic book fans, using the power of his ring, but it didn't look that way. So I would have added some sort of green hue when he flies, and I really hope that in the TV show Lanterns, that they showcase that, because it didn't convey that that's how he got his flight. But that's the nerdy side of me freaking out a little bit. I loved his comedy. I didn't think it was too much, and I absolutely love when he showed up on the battlefield and started swatting away the enemy forces that were attacking. I forget the name of that country that they were attacking, but he's swatting them away, as you could see in just like in the trailer. But then he starts flipping them off, and these giant green hands coming out of the ground were smacking soldiers left and right, flipping them off at the same time. I thought it was pretty funny. Some of you out there might think that that was juvenile, but what do you expect from James Gunn? And it was pretty accurate for Guy Gardner. Nicholas Holt's Lex Luthor, for the most part, I was on board with. I would have to say that out of all of the Superman movies, Lex Luthor is the character that none of the movies have really gotten right, in my book. The perfect Lex Luthor, to me, is this Lex Luthor from Superman the Animated Series, voiced by Clancy Brown. The undeterred, very composed, very smart businessman. And this is the closest version that we've got so far with Nicholas Hoult. But he gets so emotional. And I'll touch on emotion in a second, because while some people complain that Superman got too emotional, I was quite all right with that, for the simple fact that he's got a lot of emotion in here for the human race. But going back to Nicholas Holt's Lex Luthor seems really unhinged. Gosh, he spits colorful metaphors, multiple profanities throughout the movie, especially when he's really pissed off. And that's fine. It really showcased how angry he can get. What I didn't like so much is the little quirks that he had. I thought it was very juvenile when he's just walking around throwing stuff on the floor because he's throwing a little tantrum because things weren't going his way. And his little cronies were clamoring behind him as stammering idiots, picking up shattered coffee mugs and pencils and pens that were knocked onto the floor. I could have done without that. Kind of temper tantrumy. I also really did not like the way that they had Lex fight Superman. And when I say that, Lex fighting Superman by using vocal cues to individuals that look like they're controlling parts of Ultraman and the hero of Baravia. And he would just go out and just shout almost like B12, B18, I-32, like he was at a bingo party. But he was shouting out commands, and the commands were related to an action that one of these villains that he was controlling are doing. Now, I know he's really smart, and they let you know that he was calling out these attacks because he'd been studying Superman over the past 3 years and knew how he fought and how he thought. And so he could counter punch and counter attack, but he was doing it verbally, and I don't know. I really didn't like that. I wish the villains could have just fought under their own devices and they weren't being controlled mentally or physically by anybody. So that's a problem that I had with the movie in terms of Lex Luthor's portrayal. But overall, I thought it was fine. I thought the CGI was good. We're at a point now where I don't think there's, oh my God, amazing, fantastic CGI. I think it's either sloppy or fine. And this was fine. There are some design choices that maybe I wouldn't have gone with in the Black Hole River in the Dimension Between Dimensions. It's kind of pixelated, almost reminded me of Minecraft a little bit. It is what it is. It's a design choice. But overall, the acting was fantastic. The acting was great. The CGI was fine. I would like to point out that a lot of the rumors and a lot of the complaints that early screenings had and test screenings, I think you can tell if you were paying attention what sections folks who were doing test screenings didn't like and what was removed because there was remnants of that. Case in point being the monkeys. I don't know if any of you remember the fiasco where supposedly Lex had a whole bunch of monkeys who were mean tweeting online, cyberbullying Superman. That wasn't in the movie, but at the very end of the movie, there were random 6 or 7 monkeys that had escaped from Lex Luthor's crashed ship or whatever it was. And so I was like, it was probably hard to cut out the monkeys so fully, because there they are. And you probably would just think that they escaped from a zoo if you hadn't been keeping up with the drama before Superman released. But since that's a lot of what I do, it was either one hell of a coincidence or those were the mean tweeting monkeys. Also, the pacing of the movie seemed like it was supposed to be presented in one way and it was cut and edited to be another. What I'm alluding to is the fact that they had supposedly had the movie play out almost like an episode of 24, if anybody remembers that show. And periodically they'd have, you're at 10 o'clock in the morning, 2 o'clock in the afternoon, 7 o'clock in the afternoon, 11:32 in the evening, and just have the movie play out at different parts of different times of the day, the week. And they didn't do that. They seemingly cut it out and they turned it into a movie and that goes in chronological order. But the way the editing was done and the way some of the scenes play out, you can definitely see that it was shot to be portrayed in that sort of fashion. The music was really good. Not great. I was actually really stoked for the soundtrack and the John Williams score. And while the John Williams score is present, it's not in the same way as it was in Superman Returns, where very classic themes and melodies were used in similar ways as in the Superman 1978. And I understand why they did that, because this is not a sequel or anything like that. This is more of a nod and an homage, like what Danny Elfman did by incorporating a very brief bit of John Williams' Superman theme in Joss Whedon's Justice League, and what he did with Batman's themes, and not only in Justice League, but in The Flash. In this movie, there are more of nods to specific themes, specific keys, and not so much the full theme playing out. There are bits and pieces of the John Williams theme played in different ways at different times of the movie. Case in point, the roll up, the part of the John Williams theme that's really iconic, when you're waiting for Superman to show up and you're like, oh, I think he's coming. I think he's getting ready to transform and to change. They played that for a section when Superman whistled for help, and here comes Krypto to attack some of Lex Luthor's goons. So interesting thematic choices used with the music throughout the movie. I was fine with it. I'm very happy that they used some of John Williams' theme, because I don't care what anybody says. I'm of the thought process that Superman is timeless, very similar to James Bond. And why not have bits and pieces of that iconic theme that fits the iconic character? Hans Zimmer's themes for Man of Steel were great, but we're talking about a completely different ball of wax when we're talking about John Williams' theme and how it correlates to Superman. I could go on and keep rambling about different parts of the movie, but overall, I thoroughly enjoyed myself. I didn't leave disappointed. I left wanting more. And if that makes sense, I left wanting more. And if I were the director, I think there's some things that I would have cut back. There's other things that I would have focused on. And I will agree with some other reviewers out there on YouTube who were basically describing a lot of the situations as, oh, come on, you're going to give it to me. Oh, come on. Like a horrible tease. Really, you couldn't just see that out all the way through. So overall, I'm going to give this a 7.5 out of 10. Let me know in the comments what you thought of the movie. Do you think it was as bad as the Doomsayers were going to be? Do you think it's as good as the positive buzz was leading it up to be? And how do you think the box office is going to perform? That's an important piece right there. This movie needs to do well in order to launch the DCU further. I think it's going to do that. I don't think it's going to make $1 billion worldwide like some people would hope, but I would not be surprised if it gets 650, 700 million when all is said and done. And I think it will do really well streaming and after that. Oh, one more little bit before I forget. Millie Alcock does show up briefly as Supergirl towards the end. And I am interested to see where her movie takes her. I won't go into too much more detail as to how she's portrayed. You can find some of that information from others online. Yeah. That's it for this episode. Thank you so much for joining me. And yeah, stay hopeful, and we'll see you in the next video. Take care.